yeah, I think that means everyone's just been booted off, but if people want to come on camera, they can click the little button or the little pop-up that comes up on the screen and it'll be fine. Great.
Okay, I'll get started with the intro. So today we've got Catherine Charbonneau, and she is Director of the Policy Community Partnerships Office, leading the Clerk's Policy Community Initiative with a startup mindset inside government. She's a human-centered policy designer, organizational development professional, bilingual facilitator, and mentor to several policy professionals. Previously, she headed design at the ESDC Innovation Lab, envisioning and building an internal consultancy practice to apply policy design tools across a range of government challenges. A seasoned public servant, she brings experience leading federal, provincial, territorial efforts, setting up space to turn intergovernmental dialogue into strategic collaboration, perspective thinking and strategic planning, and helping discover how large systems can work differently in complex environments. Today, she'll be joining us to talk about counterfactuals and how they might reshape the way we design policy. We'll explore methods that challenge assumptions and theories of change, rethink performance measures or interventions, and reframe program delivery or objectives. From foresight and policy options to lo-fi prototyping and delivery, we're going to discover how surfacing paradoxes and perspective help unlock new pathways for impactful and resilient policy implementation and help navigate uncertainty. So, please join me in welcoming Catherine Charbonneau.
Merci beaucoup. Hello, everybody. I'm really happy to be here today. Um, it's a wonderful topic, and then I realized, wow, this is actually a conference topic. We can talk about all of these things for multiple hours. I'm really excited today to own in and zone in on counterfactuals. I'm also with a few colleagues of mine who are also going to be supporting me in this presentation. But just wanted to extend a thank you to Andrew, who invited me for this event, and really, really looking forward to the engagement. So I'll be also sharing my screen during the presentation, so I sometimes may lose sight of some of you. I was assured that if you have your hand up and I have a question, that I'll be notified, so this way I can answer, as well as the chat function. But before I dive into the topic of how to use counterfactual for adaptive policymaking, and just the title itself, there's a lot to deconstruct, which we will do today. I have a couple of housekeeping also on my side very quickly, just to give a sense of how I'd like the session to unfold. I want to first start by saying thank you for joining me and during your day. I'm pretty sure there's a lot on your plate already, and I appreciate that you're spending some time with me on this call. I also am aware that there may be a range of practitioners on the call, and you may have a lot of seasoned designers as well as a seasoned policy practitioners, all the way to more junior level and curious minds who are starting up. So it is a bit of a deck where I hope that I'm putting a good level playing field with covering some foundational blocks. But I also invite the seasoned people on the call to also share their experiences, as well as some of their practices, or even challenge some of the things that I'll be sharing. I'm always learning, and I always appreciate having the divergent view, or the validating view. That said. Lastly, with regards to housekeeping, I'm going to do a quick presentation. Well, I say quick, not that quick, but I will cover a little bit about the Policy Community Partnerships Office. I'll talk about counterfactuals. I also have in store an instant polling where I hope that we can garner your perspectives on counterfactuals, also get to know a little bit the audience. Similar to this group and similar to the policy design community, we are constantly gathering insights and input. And this presentation essentially is relatively new. It's complementary to a lot of the work that the initiative and the team does. So I'll be really looking forward to your feedback. So after I present, then we have a lot of space for questions, and I'm looking forward to that engagement. So I'll share my screen right now, and I will lose sight of some of you. Bear with me for a moment. And while I find my deck, just a second. I had it, of course, just before the session. I had it right open, and there we go. I hope everybody still sees the presentation. And by the way, I will share this slides with Andy and his team, so it can be shared back to you, and you can have access to it. And it's, as I said, it's an evolving product. So is everybody okay with the screen? I just wanted to check first. Good. Yes. Okay.
Can you, Catherine, can you put your screen into present mode?
Oh, yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
That's it.
Here we go. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So really today, my goal is to build adaptive policy making capacity with counterfactual thinking. I also have a goal of wanting to have a strategic discussion with you on adaptive policy work. Essentially, there's a lot changing in the policy practice, the nature of policy making, the competencies, the skills, the mindsets. There's a lot that is always evolving. So that's really helpful for us to hear, because it is a source of counterfactual. And my third goal is not really written there, but it's really to continue to strengthen the relationships with your community. It's a priority for us to continue to connect with the great work that's happening. I'm always very inspired by the work of the UK policy design community. All right, so the Policy Community Partnerships Office, it exists to convene across the whole federal public service on all policy implementation and policy development as well. We have 3 streams of work really where we focus our most of our programming activities. We're operating a little bit like a think tank, similar to you, where we do a lot of user research on our own policy practitioners with the goal of developing guidance materials, recommendations, stronger partnerships to respond to some community needs, as well as providing some insight. So I like to say that we have an insight pipeline to mirror back what our community is doing. We do a lot of collective learning similar to this event in a conference, as well as we convene across all policy functions. We are about a little over 11,000 policy practitioners that consider our policy community their primary community of practice. We are very small. We are 5, depending on the year and where we are in the funding cycle. We fluctuate between 5 to 12, and we focus on research, focus on projects. Host a lot of events, and have a back office that manages all our funding, because we are not core funded as an organization. So that why I share this context is because it's really exciting for the team, but at the same time we're always learning on the edge, and we're always having to adapt to the environment in which we operate. I also wanted to invite you, if you want to learn more about our office and what we do, to our website. There's a lot more information. It's a landing page where you can read a little bit more about us. Now, going into the topic of adaptive policy making, the insights pipeline, I wanted to demonstrate that what I'm talking about today is something that we've been mulling over for a few years now. And really wanting to ground this research with the actual practice, what's happening, and monitoring these changes through our different engagement channels. This is a Clerk's initiative, as it was said in the beginning, and so we are privileged in a way to have the support of a full ADM committee that provides some strategic guidance. But we also have a lot of channels at the middle level and through the operational ranks as well. And this theme of adaptive policy making came out of lessons learned from COVID. So it's already a while back when we think about it. But at the time, the policy community felt quite strained and essoufflé or tired, I would say, from a lot of work. And we really wanted to tap in on the lessons learned and framing more capacity on implementation. As the clerk said to us in a retreat, she said to us, she said, I'm not here to want to entice a lot of more generative ideas. There's a lot, we're really good at being generative and putting ideas and options out there, but we really struggle at turning these really great ideas into reality, which is where design is perfect space for it. And then we held our conference on adaptive policy making and invited actually Darren Swanson. If it's a name that you haven't heard, Darren Swanson wrote a book on adaptive policies in 2009, and it was one of the first resources that we looked into, and invited him to speak about how he has created this book for policy practitioners to navigate uncertainty. And through learning about adaptive policy making, through showcases of case studies and our research and the insights from our practitioners, we really needed to stop garnering and really turn to like turning this into capacity building. And so right now, this is where we are. And then there's multiple streams that are happening. And that's how I like to function. There's a lot of, it's more of a portfolio approach, because we don't really know exactly how some of the projects will land, but it's important to have more than one approach to dissect adaptive policy making. So we created a bit of a framework with some core principles, and members of my team right now are looking at how can we gamify some of that work? How can we also create some visual products and lessons and playbook type work, and this presentation on counterfactuals. And eventually we're going to go to our conference. With regards to counterfactuals, I have a little bit of a story, because it did start earlier on than that. Design thinking and rapid impact assessment, and I'm going to say this word, rapid impact assessment or rapid impact evaluation. If some of you have never heard of it, I encourage you to read about it. Andy Rowe is the person behind that methodology. I think it was in 2004 that it was released. In 2019, when I was in the Innovation Lab at the time, I was heading design projects. One of our clients at the time really wanted to apply and test, in a way, this rapid, quote unquote, rapid methodology, which in a way is assessing the impact of an intervention, a policy intervention, on its outcome against what if it wasn't an intervention at all. So imagining no intervention. So it kind of operated as an A/B tester. And when we learned about that, that counterfactual approach of existing versus non-existent, and read about Andy's methodology of triangulating technical expertise with program owners, everything sounded like this is design thinking methodology. And so we created a observatory of public service case study. It's in the library if ever you want to read it, and I can also attach it, follow up to this email. But essentially, this is where that inception for me about connecting counterfactual thinking with adaptive policy making started. So before I go into counterfactuals and adaptive policy making, I think it's a good opportunity just for me to know who's in the room, which will help frame the next 10 minutes or so. of the presentation and then open up to the floor. So I'm inviting you to scan the current QR code that is in front of you. And my colleague, Dominic, will be sharing his screen so we can see live, especially the first 3 questions. There's 7 questions, but we will focus on the first 3, which helps us see who's who, your first views on hearing about counterfactuals. So I guess I'm assuming I need to stop sharing my screen so that Dominic can share his. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's the one, Catherine.
Okay, there you go, Dominic. It's for you. So here's the information you can scan, or you can go to www.menti.com, and the code is 17728092. I see that 47 have joined. Let's just wait a few more. I see there's 90 in the room. Let's try to pump this a little bit more. If you can, join us. Okay. All right. So the first question, do you see it, Dominique? So we really wanted to have a bit of a sense of what's your current policy work context. Some of you work, so it helps us understand who's in the room. Thanks, Andrew, for putting it in the chat as well. Yeah, and one thing I will say is most of my career I spent in the line department, though working. This is a novelty of the Policy Community Partnerships Office, is that we are housed in a line department, but we serve the whole of the public service, and so we have our own mandate and don't necessarily link to a departmental mandate. So we operate, as we call it, in residence into a portable organization if our champion changes. Yeah. All right, so most of you are working in central agency or federal, and then I see a mix down the pipeline of different layers of government. LO2, my other one, non-for-profit. Hello. Next question. Where in the policy cycle have you spent most of your career? So this is how I dissect it. It might be new for you to see it framed this way. Upstream functions in policy are mostly typically development work, conceptual work, advice, option analysis, research, foresight, policy politics, and then downstream functions are typically more towards implementation, operations, evaluation, the policy user interface, and then delivery. And lateral functions, I like to integrate them because they're really important to support the work the policy does. So we have the bulk of people working in upstream functions, which is actually fantastic for me to hear, because I know there's a lot of affinities with design, and it's also for us starting to emerge. And then the last question, I guess. Where do your most valuable what if insights come from? And that's starting to dip into counterfactual thinking. So if you're thinking about your what if scenarios, and maybe this is not something you do, and that's totally fine as well. It's very mixed right now. I see it evolving live. We've got 77 people in the room that are participating, so that's really good. So thank you so much. Okay, so it's very dispersed in terms of And I'm thinking the frontline service delivery feedback is coming first, but the color I realize is very close to the user stories. Oh, I also see the percentage there. Yeah, so user stories and frontline service. But then I hope that with some of the options that I put out there, it starts to perk up some other areas that you might be considering for counterfactuals. Let's do one more, Dominic, and then we'll go back to the presentation and then come back to it after. At what point does policy work actually become adaptive in your context? Maybe you don't necessarily notice this, but is it usually at problem definition and framing, during options analysis, only when something goes wrong, and it's panic inside the organization, don't really know, not really paid attention to that. And maybe the question does not apply, perhaps, but Okay, it sounds like it's mostly at the front end, a problem definition, framing, issue research, mapping the context. Actually, this is surprising. I was expecting this to be more towards during implementation. So, okay, so let's go back to the presentation. I'll just share back my screen. Thanks so much, Dominic, and thanks everyone. We'll get back to more questions about counterfactuals in a moment. Share back screen. Okay. All right, I hope it's now okay back. I just need to change the slide. Okay, so now I'm gonna read that slide. We're doing adaptive policy making. We're just not structuring it. When everything is moving, counterfactuals, ground adaptive policy work, and structure insights and feedback loops while navigating evolving and continuous constraint. I wanted to sit a little bit on the words that are on this slide because there are some, what I call almost some contradictions. Maybe someone wants to share what they see as a contradiction in this one. And any takers? No. So with counterfactuals, oftentimes we're juxtaposing different realities. And here, counterfactual is grounded in the polarity of agile or adaptive in the structuring of the insight. So just like in systemic design, pulling together two values that have a tendency to be opposite and designing for a solution where both values are equally being used rather than just one that is winning over the other one. That polarity thinking is prevalent in a lot of design work, but especially in counterfactual and in policy innovation. And here, counterfactuals actually is in a way of solving agility and structure. And I'll move to explain a little bit what I mean by this in a second. Counterfactual, essentially, it's the practice of doing what if then questioning and exploration of alternatives. It's essentially what we see a lot of the case studies that came to us. It's basically fixing while you are delivering. It's starting up while you are delivering. It's consulting stakeholders and consulting your political political decision makers while you're also delivering and managing expectations. It's scaling what you're trying to achieve while you're also delivering. It's also reacting to a surprise announcement. Here, there's a budget announcement that was not maybe on your radar. So it's always about doing something conceptual while also delivering. There's always a high degree of uncertainty. Also, another feature that we've realized with adaptive policy making is there's often cross-sectoral partnerships or complex governance that is involved. Is typically multidisciplinary, and what I mean by multidisciplinary and That's also something I define a lot. Is it's not just about having a range of disciplines in policy practice, such as sociology, economy, and public administration, the classics. But we mean by multidisciplinary is that you have your engineers, your software engineers, you've got your change management experts, you've got your communication strategists, you've got your legal team, you've got your policy practitioners. So we're really talking about different occupational groups in a way for multidisciplinary. It's oftentimes working with partial data, partial operations, and really trying to grow out of this to scale and to expand. There's also a lot of learning loops that need to be involved and embedded, a lot of data gathering, emergent signals, and finally, there's a lot of focus also on the future. So in all of that space, what we're trying to do with counterfactual thinking is own in on 3 frames. The first frame that's important is basically the foundational frame to work with is what's currently happening. So that's fed from your real-time information, or it's fed from your dashboards. So you've got something that grounds your current state and grounds the assumptions of that current state. So maybe a theory of change or a logic model or something, a product, a policy product that grounds it. And then concurrently to that frame, you've got the frame of what could happen, what could have happened if something else would be manipulated. So you're manipulating a few variables from the current state, and now you're sort of exploring mock-up, or in an alternative way, what might that look like? And equally to that frame, we all know that there's multiple realities that coexist. We're also exploring the frame of what else is concurrently happening that might not be on our radar or is on our radar, but dismissed, or it's part of the trade-off sort of equation. So these frames are important. That's where we evolved a little bit from the original methodology of rapid impact assessment of being a counterfactual of one that exists versus one that doesn't exist. It's definitely more nuanced. And so in terms of, and I apologize, this slide, I need to redo it. I know I was like, I don't necessarily love it. There's a lot of information, but I wanted to share some of the way I see things triangulate. For me, triangulation is a really core skill. And in that first design, in the visual that we see on the right-hand side, I put the triangulation of deciding, building, and adapting. And they were purposefully chosen to be these words because there is always an opportunity to intervene or not. And that decision holds a lot of potential for counterfactual, but it also is a major driver for the other two to continue. With regards to building, I did not write develop, or I did not write implement, because what we're trying to do, and what you all probably already are doing, is to turn plans, turns concept, turns options, turn analysis into something that's concrete, a product, a service, an event, a policy, a regulation. Like, we're really building something. And then the adapt side is really about the readiness to learn, the readiness to set up the different infrastructure and learn from it. And that is a good segue, actually. I forgot to say, in the build, I did write policy infrastructure. So you need to have a policy infrastructure there. And oftentimes, I'm sure you have encountered that, policy infrastructure is behind the curtain. It's assumed that all of these pieces that support the delivery work. And here I'm giving example, for example, of your digital infrastructure, how the tools interoperate, or your data infrastructure, how the data is informed, your governance systems, your partnership models. There's a whole lot in policy infrastructure that oftentimes is glossed. What we're trying to do with counterfactual is surfacing what is implicit in that policy infrastructure, to challenge potentially handoffs, or to challenge sequencing, or to challenge the fact that it's actually not even developed and we're doing this on the corner of our desk. So that's really important to highlight. Also in triangulation with decide, build, and adapt, it's in my first bullet here, counterfactual connect these three, but it's also within a contextual scale. And that's also important because we've all seen policy launched and then through the years evolve in terms of how they are interpreted with the environment. So there's a context that is attached to that, but there's also scale. And what I mean by scale is that, are we exploring this from a micro perspective of either users' behaviors, or are we talking about more of a meso scale of like more organizations or dynamics of relationships, or more of a macro scale? And so that is also important to define, and that is also important to articulate. What counterfactuals do with a questioning about what's currently happening, what could be happening if we were to manipulate variables, and what else can coexist, we're starting to really put at the service what is invisible in the complexity. And we're starting to also create learning patterns with some of the choices that we are dismissing. The other piece that is important is that with that approach, with counterfactual, it's not an exercise that you do alone on your desk. It's like design. It necessitates having multiple perspectives involved live and challenging the different assumptions that you're putting forward. And I will give some concrete examples in a moment, just bear with me. So examples of practical counterfactual questions, you can line them up to me, there's 3 buckets that I like to explore counterfactual. One is about the alternative pathways to the current one that could be concurrent and coexisting, and one that would be very different. What if we were to change these things? What would that look like? So this one is really to surface different journeys or different ways that the policy intervention survives different disruptions or different environments. There's also a way of framing your question around the causal levers. The causal levers. And so here, this one is really in trying to surface logic leaps or logic connections that you're making, and strengthening either a logic model, or strengthening the way that the partnerships are being handed together, perhaps supported with a blueprint, a service blueprint. It's essentially that causal relationship that we're trying to explore. And then the last one, which also connects with a principle of adaptive policy making, is around converting what you know now, what you in a way wish you had known, but now you know. And so these are your lessons learned, but how do you convert this into your forward thinking, into moving forward, how you should be acting next time, and what is the future that you now want to have, because that future could have evolved from when it was originally developed. And so that these are in a way areas or examples of practical counterfactual questions that I think could be helpful for your work. And so essentially what we're trying to do with counterfactual is developing that habit. It's really about generating alternatives. It's really about building them early, often, apply them regularly. It's almost if you can set them up in a way that you regularly have a counterfactual event or a counterfactual check-in. So you're already preparing the people coming in that that's actually something that you're going to be doing. It's also a function of policy is not just about what we know, but as we all know, it's always about trying to see what is also not on our radar, and to continually assess these trade-offs that we're making. So I added this slide just at the last minute last night because I figured, okay, I still feel like I'm very conceptual. I'm trying to be practical, but kind of turned it into a recipe. What are some of the things that you need? Really being curious, critical, creative. You need to have your current state being described. You need so grounded in a policy artifact that exists. You need to have your scenario mock-ups to your current state. This is also very important. You need to have scales. So what I mean by scales, this time it's not about meso, micro, and micro. It's more about you need to be able to, when you're bringing a group of people together, to have an artifact that they can work with. So a scale, a linear numeric from 1 to 5 or 1 to 10, or agreement scale, a Likert, or a value slider, two opposing futures, and you want people to move, or two operational variables that you are presenting, and you want people to put them. And so you're able to compare that qualitative insight into something quantitative. So it's really important to do that, and it helps at the same time when you're tallying all the input that you have against potential targets that you wish to achieve for something to continue to be explored, that you actually have something that grounds your work. You need your point of views, your POVs, and these are the ones that I find most insightful when they're put in the same room. Just talking about the scale and building the scale sometimes together can take quite a while, but it's very helpful to have these perspectives there. Having a sense of knowing your requirements, what is a must that you have to absolutely have in the counterfactual? That's really important to clarify that early. And you need to have some facilitator skills because you're going to be amongst a lot of people that are passionate about their point of views and be able to push through what they're going to be sharing. So I had a quick exercise. I'm mindful of the time. It's going so fast. I just wanted to share a couple of ways of finding counterfactuals that are hiding in plain sight. Every time you're asking about how you want to sequence and how you want to scale up, you have an opportunity to do a counterfactual here. We had a group come for the Dental Canada plan, and essentially they had to quickly turn around and develop a program from scratch to support the whole population, but they had literally a year to do this, which would typically take 3 to 5 to even 8 years, they were told by a lot of experts. But in order for them to sequence and scale, they, decided to work from starting with different population and group. It's one way of scaling, or to work with something that already exists in the system while you're building something else. So that's really important. That's a place where if you observe where are the biggest strains or where are the biggest surges, you can identify counterfactuals. Another area where you can identify counterfactual is the user stories, and I saw in the live polling that's also an area where you ground a lot of your work. Changing your user stories definitely can be a nice source of counterfactual, as well as changing the partnership. What if the partnerships were different? What if the partnerships either longer agreements, shorter agreements, or rotational agreements? Like, you can really change the relationships or manipulating the relationship. And then finally is about what you might want to redesign and reassign. The key word here for me is being prospective, and I know that's a bit different than how government plans to have everything sort of predictable. Perspective is not necessarily meaning that you're not predictable, is meaning that you're open to how it's going to be unfolding, and to be able to make sure that you have the championship support to be able to continue to do that. I want to go back to checking in on the survey, and I have one more last slide. I realized time flew, but let's go back, Dominique. I'm going to start sharing and just go back to the questions that you guys have. Okay, so the next question that we had was about the biggest barriers to apply counterfactual in your context. What for you are some of the biggest barriers? So we're seeing it's a bit spread out as well. And these are built from some of my own experience of interacting with a lot of clients over the years on multiple projects and having these being stated as often some of the challenges that they face. Yeah, lack of time, I understand lack of time. At the same time, this is where polarity is at play. If we're able to build in polarity values and articulate those polarity values and check in on them, it helps with time, but I can appreciate that it takes time to bring on board all the work. Yeah. Siloed structures, closed system, turf wars, this definitely resonates. And okay, let's move to the next question. I see someone that I didn't have a chance to read the whole thing. I'll look at the chat in a moment. Where are counterfactual insight most often hiding in your policy work? So I did say, I covered very quickly the slide about sequencing, scaling, and triangulating user stories and repurposing. But where do you think a lot of things hide? And that we might not necessarily, we might skim or skip quickly the counterfactual approach. So here it seems like nowhere systematically we don't really capture counterfactual. Yeah. Design products. Yeah. It comes up. There's a lot in design products. Service blueprints, maps, touch points, empathy maps. Yes, because you can always put extreme users, more average users. You can develop archetypes, personas. Like you have a lot of opportunities to have counterfactuals through design products. And then you have it through the formal discussion group. Okay. So the most one is we don't necessarily capture counterfactual. So thank you for that insight. And I'll say one thing about counterfactual. Today, it's not like I was sharing something that did not exist. I hope I'm naming something that may just be in the background that some of you already do, but maybe not it's not a systemic practice. But anyway, so just wanted to share that tidbit. Next question, Dom. Okay, so this one is so I'll let you to answer this one. We can close so it's really about helping with if there's anything that you heard today about counterfactual. But I'll move to my last slide before I get a few questions and read some of the comments. So Dom, maybe close this so I can share back my screen. Merci Dominique. Okay. Oh, I lost you guys. Sorry, just a moment. Where am I? Do you still hear me?
Yeah, we've still got you. There's a bunch of chatter in the chat, so I wonder whether people have come in with some questions or anything. Feel free.
Yeah. So I'll move with my last slide if you have a question. So really, all I wanted to say with regards to counterfactuals, it applies to small projects, to really large scale changes and really large scale initiatives. one of the things that's really important is that you think about iterations and that you identify where there's more static handoffs or static, more rigid areas. That's usually a signal that eventually something's going to either break through crisis, and that's where counterfactuals are going to come, which we saw in the previous polls is where we go. But also knowing and being mindful that what we produce really shapes what's being decided. I think we all know that. Use your counterfactuals across policy products through the whole policy cycle with an intent to guide implementation. And the last piece I'll say is that counterfactual thinking is actually not very expensive and non-intrusive. This is my biggest insight, is that, you know, working with a lot of clients, there's a lot of attachment to legacy pieces or to legacy products, like logic models or theories of change or performance monitoring frameworks or evaluation plans. Like there's an attachment because there's a lot of work that's come to play. There's approvals. And then when you're starting to play in this, you know, nobody wants to open a can of worms. But doing counterfactuals with alternative mock-ups, in a way, it feeds adaptive policymaking by not being intrusive. Because you are in an alternative reality, you are exploring what that might look like. And so it brings on board those that might be more suspicious or more skeptical about what you're trying to achieve. And so what it does, though, it's really trying to turn what's implicit in the ecosystem to something that's more visual, that's more visible, that's more explicit. So that's how I'm going to end. If you want to know more and reach us, you can reach us. Here's our email, generic mailbox, but also our website again to connect with us. So I'll stop sharing. How has counterfactual helped close implementation gap? This is a great question because with regards to, for example, when we were working through a grants and contribution project, the policy objectives to break isolation, for example, of seniors had very big objectives. But at the same time, the grants and contribution applicants felt that the way that the questions were stated into the applicant approach and the timing of the application process for the calls for proposal were a bit disjointed. And so it was very difficult for I would say, successful applicants to continue to participate into, or even to feed into this. And we were able to triangulate some of these insights about the intent and the actual reality that happens on the ground and some of the frictions and irritants that were there to help improve the program impact. That's just a quick, one concrete example that we did. Yeah. Okay, I lost again, everybody. Something else that came up, I'm just reading in the chat. I don't know if my answer helped, but it was just one example. It can also help implementation by challenging the logic leaps in your implementation plans. It can help with setting up the partnership and the contribution agreements or the agreements that you have with your partnership with clarity in terms of the requirements and constraints. It can help with implementation around your data architecture and what type of information that is helpful to monitor progress and to monitor the impact that you are achieving with the intent that you have with your policy objective, so that this helps with implementation. It can help with stress testing under surge capacity that you have identified where things sort of start breaking away. What's going on in the system. So I hope that answers your question. Feel free to, yeah.
I was going to say, there's a question that was sort of at the beginning around what do we mean by adaptive? And I think that was in reference to one of your first slides.
Yes. So I came a little bit later, and this is good feedback for me to maybe bring this up earlier in the presentation. As I said, it's developing while delivering. And there's all kinds of developing, scaling, starting, consulting, researching. You're trying to do all these things and doing your legal framework, doing your legal analysis, doing all these things while you're delivering, and there's pressure to deliver and a lot of uncertainty. And so you're trying to compose with this very high pressure cooker type environment, or working with legacy systems, and you have to work with it and find solutions to deliver on something, and you have to explain up or sideways, laterally, why it's taking some time. But essentially, that's what we mean by adaptive. A lot of feedback loops, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of partial data and partial information, and also really looking at to the future, what you're trying to achieve, and continuously assessing that plausible future and whether or not that still aligns with what you have in mind.
Fab. Just checking the chat. If anyone wants to come off mute and ask a question, then go for it. But we've also got one from Molly, who said she's wondering how the uptake has been on the counterfactual approach from inside Central Government of Canada.
It's actually something that the Government of Canada put a rapid assessment evaluation guide, and I can also include that in the chat. Treasury Board Secretariat encouraged a lot of organizations to use that approach to assess rapidly some of the impacts and outcomes and risks that they have. And so it's been encouraged as part of the umbrella of experimentation to use, and more and more are approaching this with also design, including with design.
Lots of comments around general conversation between different colleagues around mapping, pace layers, etc., etc.
So I'm mindful of the time, and I know people are going to start leaving, but I want to say this is an ongoing effort. If you've got feedback through the poll about us to improve on this topic, and we also have a lot of other research areas that we might want to explore together. I know this community also does a lot, so I just want to say thank you for inviting me again and inviting the team.
Amazing. I think we'll wrap up there. If anyone has any questions, I can pop your sort of details in the chat, and this session will be recorded, so I'll put it on YouTube, etc., etc. Yeah, thank you so much, Catherine and team. This has been great, really interesting stuff that you guys are doing.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Catherine. I'm just gonna stop recording.